Welcome into the Warchant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron of 97.9 ESPN Radio. To my left, Ira Schoffel. To my right, Gene Williams, both Warchant.com. Pleasure to be with you. Florida State defeats the University of Florida for the fifth consecutive time, 4 times in a row down in Gainesville. Solace in an otherwise disappointing season. And now, with an opportunity to defeat Louisiana Monroe, noon, watch ESPN?
Yeah,
I think we got Watch ESPN. There you go, big time. Florida State on championship weekend will be taking on Louisiana Monroe with an opportunity to get to 500, which is actually significant, and become bowl eligible. But that's not really the story. The purpose of this special edition of the Warchant.com report is the fact that Jimbo Fisher has been offered the head coaching job by Texas A&M. Third year in a row, certainly, that Jimbo Fisher has been involved in all of this. Now, an accomplished coach at Florida State is Jimbo Fisher indeed. The 29-game win streak, the 3 ACC titles, the national championship, that's all on the ledger. 14-2 against his in-state rivals. Without question, he's achieved an awful lot here at Florida State. Assuming he does take the Texas A&M offer, Gene, why would he take what we all believe is certainly a lesser job?
Oh, yeah, it definitely is. I mean, what do you got? I don't know, 50, 60, whenever somebody won a national championship, they're a perennial 7-8 win team. They've really accomplished nothing. So that's obvious. I think there's a couple things. Maybe it's the timing. I know Coach Fisher has said before, and to a lot of people at this day and age, coaches have kind of a run. I mean, you get a certain number of years and things start to get stale. You need a new message. You know, maybe he feels like the way this season has gone, the timing now is a good time to get out. And I think there's also the perception the grass is always greener. It's no secret. He complains a lot about stuff, and some of it's for good reason. He wants to improve some things, but he complains a lot about stuff. Maybe his impression, he's going to go to Texas A&M, and they're going to give him everything he wants. He's not going to have to worry about all this politics and trying to get facilities. It's all going to be handed to him. He's going to get a rude awakening that it's never that easy. But maybe in his mind, that's the way things are playing. Of course, there's the money angle, too. And a prideful guy wants to, they're going to throw him a $2 million raise and all this stuff. You know, maybe that's playing to him.
Yeah, it's hard not to at least point out that's a 40% raise or so. You kind of can't ignore that. But I don't really think it's about the money. What does this tell us about Coach Fisher, the year in and year out flirtations with other jobs?
You know, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, I think, number one, like most people, he would, if he's had success and people desire his services, he's going to listen. I don't think anybody begrudges him that. But I think what he's also done, and he and his agent, Jimmy Sexton, have done, is use this as an opportunity to leverage what they can get out of Florida State. Not from him personally, not just raises. I think early on that was kind of the objective. But since the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, it's been more about getting more money for his assistant coaches, getting better facilities, getting a better infrastructure in place for the future of the program. And again, I think that's a positive for Florida State. So, I think that's one of the things they've used it for in the past. This year's a little bit different, though. I think this year, this opportunity with Texas A&M, you look at Florida State already has made a commitment to Florida State in terms of coaches' salaries. Jimbo Fisher is one of the highest paid coaches in the country. His coaching staff, FSU's assistant coaches as a group, are the 6th highest paid coaching staff in the country. No, they don't have one of those big $1.5 million assistant coaches, but that's partly because Jimbo, the way he allocates his money, is he pays them all really well. They also don't have anybody not getting paid much at all. They all get paid substantial salaries. So I don't think this one's about leverage. I think going into it. Now, if he were to stay, I do think Florida State would have to make some changes. But I just think it's kind of the nature of how Jimbo Fisher and Jimmy Sexton negotiate is they use these opportunities to get whatever they can get out of Florida State.
For me, the issues behind the scenes that we're all aware of and we don't, due to time constraints, get into here. It's also very layered. It would be hours that we'd be in front of this camera talking about that situation. To me, it's a matter of ill timing. It's one thing, you can make valid points about structure and the way things are set up and the problems you might have with certain entities. And we might actually agree with them on some of those things. But the timing for these complaints, and public complaints at that, seem awfully odd when you're in the midst of a season in which you're sub 500 and struggle to win a home game. That rubs people the wrong way, especially when it's on the back end of 3 consecutive years now of dealing with these flirtations. The Texas Board of Regents need to approve the contract. There's a special session that's going to take place Thursday. I guess if he keeps dragging this out, how difficult a situation does this become for the team and for FSU's administration, Gene?
Like you, Jeff, I speak to some people in the administration, the Seminole boosters. There's some upset people there already at this point. I think he had a window of maybe 24 hours or so after the Sumlin thing, after the stuff was out, to resolve this one way or the other. Now that it's dragged on this long, and there's a lot of reports that it looks like he's taking the job, at least everybody in A&M does, there's a lot of people at FSU who are not happy with this. And it's not just a one-time thing. This has happened year after year after year. There's a cumulative effect that takes place when you beat your fans. And he can say what he wants about, I'm not on social media, I'm this. Those fans are your shareholders. They pay your salary, and they're all upset about this, the way you've handled this thing. So if he comes back now, it's going to make things some ugly. It's just like that. You get the girlfriend that keeps cheating on you, and you let her keep coming back over and over and over again. At some point, you go, enough's enough. I got it. You're not treating me right. You're gone.
Is it irreparable damage?
It's getting to that point. I think he would have to very quickly, he'd have to come back and do it. But what I don't know also is, like, how does he play it if he comes back? I mean, that to me is very interesting. Will he come back, apologize for how he's handled this, that he should have dealt with this quicker and not let this drag on and upset anybody? Or will he come back and do what he's done a lot of times, blame the media for perpetuating this non-story, which in that, if he comes back, that's my guess is how he would play this out, which would be completely ill-founded.
If FSU's convinced that he's going to take the Texas A&M job, should he coach the game on Saturday?
I think he should. I think there's no reason Jimbo Fisher should not coach that game. I think that the players, look, for all of the problems this season, all of the discord and the questions about whether or not the players are playing hard enough or whether or not they believe in what they're being coached to do, you can see the reactions after they win games this past week, after the Syracuse game, but certainly this past week again where they dumped Powerade on him. I think they love Jimbo Fisher. They came to play for Jimbo Fisher. There's a relationship there. He's brought this program to this point where they win national championships and compete for ACC championships every year except this year. And so I think from that standpoint, I think it makes sense. There'll be some symmetry to him going out with this team and coaching one more game. And it's not as if there's it's some prolonged thing or that they're playing some huge opponent. This game should be pretty much a formality to get bowl eligible. I think it would be a nice bookend if he does decide to leave. Be a nice bookend to his career and then move forward.
Wouldn't it get a little ugly though? My concern about, let's say we learn later this week he's definitely taking the job. It's out there and they go, you're going to go ahead and finish out your season here. That stadium could get really toxic, especially if they start losing that game. It could get really ugly there for him, and I just don't know. That'd be an uncomfortable situation for everybody. So I don't know. And maybe you let the players vote on it. Maybe you have Stan Wilcox or someone go in there, look, Coach Fisher's leaving. Going to let you guys decide whether he coaches or not. And here are the pros and here are the cons.
I will not argue, certainly, and I don't think anybody can, that he loves his players and that the reason he would want to coach that game is for them. I don't think there's any question. If he, in fact, is taking the Texas A&M job, he would try to keep that under wraps, not so much to be secretive, but because I do believe he wants to finish this season for those players. Now, there are a lot of things that we can take issue with, but I do believe he loves his players. There's no question there. FSU will have to move quickly should Jimbo Fisher leave. How prepared is FSU? Should it have to go out and hire a new coach, and how quickly would that be done, Ira?
I think, I don't know if you're ever really totally prepared. I mean, I think Tennessee probably thought they were prepared. Florida probably thought they were prepared.
Tennessee, good Lord.
It's a challenging endeavor because exactly what we've seen with Jimbo Fisher the last 3 years, we've seen one side of it. Other schools a lot of times are on the other side of it, where they think they've got a guy in place, or they think they have a strong candidate, and that person's just playing them. So I think from Florida State's standpoint, I think they've done some due diligence. I think they do have a list of coaches that they're interested in, a short list that I'm sure Athletic Director Stan Wilcox and some John Thrasher, the president of the university's leadership team, are probably privy to. I think they'll also use the help of a search firm to help them not just begin the negotiations, but also identify other candidates that they may not be aware of. There may be candidates, and Gene, you and Jeff, we've heard stories of there are other candidates out there who would be interested that FSU may not even know would be interested in this job. So I think there's a lot of things that they can do pretty quickly to get in good shape. This is a very desirable job. Florida State's not going to have to beat down the door trying to find somebody to take Florida State. There are coaches who wait their entire lives for this opportunity.
What would they need to do? What kind of coach would they need to bring in to really jumpstart recruiting?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I think we learned a very valuable lesson from what happened in Gainesville recently. They went and got a guy that they thought was a good coach in Jim McElwain, but let's face it, he had no ties to the state, a very bland personality, and that wasn't enough to get the talent in there. Just because you're University of Florida, you roll this guy in there. Maybe he's okay, X's and O's, but that was not enough to lure the big-time talent into Gainesville, and they paid a heavy price for that. Florida State can't fall in that trap. They got to get a guy, number one, that's got some ties to the state, so he knows the landscape in here because he's got to get in right away. And I think number two, he's got to have a good dynamic personality to be able to go into the living rooms, go into the high schools, and make a real impression and build some excitement. One thing Fisher does so well, he's so so passionate. He does build that excitement. You can't have a drop-off in that, or you're going to pay the price, because this is a tough time right now. Look at the landscape around Tallahassee right now. Let's see, we know we got Alabama to the west, hard recruiting that way. Now the East, Florida's got Dan Mullen. That's a major upgrade, a guy who knows the state. They're going to be better recruiting. Down south, look what Mark Richt is doing right now. It's going to be harder and harder to get kids out of one-of-your pipelines in South Florida. And up north, you got Kirby Smart at Georgia, and he's doing a heck of a lot better job there. So you better get a dynamic recruiter, or it could be big problems here.
Got to get younger, that's for sure.
Yep.
A little bit more diverse, a little bit younger, and make inroads in recruiting. Jimbo Fisher's legacy at Florida State, if he leaves, is unquestionable. He was fantastic. This would have been a descriptor, I think, mutually beneficial. I think it worked out well for Florida State. It certainly worked out well for Jimbo Fisher. They won a national championship. They won a Heisman Trophy. They had All-Americans all over the field, produced a number of NFL stars. These are things that fans fall back on when they're bragging in the debate about whose program is better, right? You want those accomplishments. You need those. You win 29 straight. You play in the college football playoff. You win the last BCS, all of those things. So he also helped modernize everything that's happening here. Things had become stale. And Florida State had been passed by in the methodology of running a program, and Jimbo helped usher them into that future. And these are all good things. So I think, by and large, if Jimbo Fisher leaves, he'll be remembered fairly fondly. Maybe not in the initial weeks, but I think long-term we'll look back at this and say that he did a very good job and that this was indeed mutually beneficial. Do you agree?
I do. I think this next week, these days, though, are important. They are important, especially in the short term. I think it's going to kind of tint how people perceive everything. But yeah, especially if he does leave and he does it in a manner that's professional and is not dragged out perpetually, and really is gracious in his exit, if he says the right things, if he really compliments the school and thanks the school and this university for the opportunity they gave him to be a first-time head coach, I think it could be well, because to your point, from the big picture standpoint, head coaching hires are always risky, and it went really well. I mean, he recruited great. He represented the university well. He defended the university at times where they needed to be defended. He defended the ACC. He helped bring up, I think you could say, a rising tide raises all ships. I think he helped bring the ACC to where it is by what he did at Florida State. So I think Jimbo Fisher's tenure was a huge success if it ends after this season. But you'd like to see him go out on the right note so that people don't see it a different way.
Well, and speaking of that, we've seen an example, and you just brought up the University of Florida. If you talk to Florida fans, obviously they very fondly remember Steve Spurrier. Not so much Urban Meyer, and that guy won 2 national titles. So Jimbo Fisher, more Steve Spurrier or Urban Meyer?
Well, I agree with Ira totally on. I think the next few days are really going to build the narrative for how he's looked on going forward. Because, like you said, if he handles it graciously, he goes off on a good note. I think some fans go, all right, we don't like how you handle this. You don't like how your last season was. But like you guys pointed out, he's done a lot. This program at the end of these so-called lost decades was in shambles, and he lifted them up out of that to become a national power. So that was a lot of it. If it keeps going sideways, kind of how things are right now, I don't know. That's going to be their last memory. I mean, like I said, the memory that Florida fans have of Urban Meyer is not good at the end. Even though he got them all those champions and had all those kind of things, he went out very poorly. And if Fisher does the same thing, I think it could be the same thing years from now. We're going to look back, but he was kind of a jerk at the end of the day. We're not happy with him like Florida fans were. So I'm very curious to see what he does over the next few days. Stay or come back. I think it's going to be an interesting story.
2 things that will always stick in fans' minds, and those loyal to Florida State, 14-2 against your rivals is a big damn deal. And winning a national championship doesn't go away, right? We remember those things, and certainly he'll be remembered for that as well. I guess final thoughts, gentlemen, before we sign off on this edition of the Warchant.com report. I am kind of curious. This changes hourly, Gene, and I know as soon as we say one thing, it could be another as soon as we're done taping. Do you get a sense that this plays out with him going to Texas A&M, or final thoughts that you want to, I guess, posit here? I'm not sure where you want to go, but
I think it's getting so late in the process. It's harder every minute that goes by. It's harder for him to come back and not go to Florida State because damage is being built by the minute here with relationships, with players, with fans. So he needs to do something quick if he's going to come back. And then again, if he comes back, how is he going to handle that? Is he going to be contrite and apologetic because he let this go on too long, or is he going to be the defensive? It's not my fault. It's everybody else. So I think that'll frame the narrative a lot about how this plays out. I'm, again, very curious because these are very interesting times for us at Florida State.
You get a sense on this timeline? When are we going to know something? I mean, people are exhausted. It's Tuesday.
I feel like Texas A&M is going to push for a decision. Florida State's kind of hands are tied a little bit. They can't make him make a decision or announce that he's staying there forever. He's under contract. They can't really force the issue. Texas A&M, I think it's the ball's in their court, and I don't think they're going to wait forever. I think it's on the outside. There's a possibility if he tacitly agrees behind closed doors, I'm coming. You have my word. I'm definitely coming. But I don't want to announce it until Sunday because I want to coach this game against ULM. Then maybe they accept that. It's only a few more days. But I also could see them pushing for a decision soon.
And it wouldn't work because this day and age, everything leaks. There's somebody would get that information that he has agreed to the contract, and it is out.
When you have that much money at stake, are you going to just hope that he's going to be by his word? A guy that's gone back they talked to LSU. You don't think they've got contacts at LSU and they go, he told us he was coming. That's what they're going to say, and they're going to say he burned us. So you're going to put all your eggs in that basket and just hope?
If not, do you think they can wait past this weekend, or do you think?
I think they. If I'm them, I'm saying Thursday when that thing's approved, that's on your desk. We need that back. We need that contract back, and then you need to go to FSU and say, I'd like to coach through it, but that's his problem at that point. FSU's problem.
For Gene Williams and Ira Schoffel, I'm Jeff Cameron. Thanks so much for watching. Good job, Ryan Kelly. We'll talk to you next time on the Warchant.com Report.